You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Back in studio.
We are back, man. Feels good. It's been several months.
I know.
Or just since last week.
The great thing about this industry is it's all over the place, right? All over the globe, all over the map. So there's all these interesting places you travel to and work with all these different folks.
Right.
Different cultures, different things like that. But after a while, you travel a lot during the summer. It starts to wear a little bit. So it's nice to be back stationary for a little bit.
Of course,
Jasmine?
we're all getting on flights this weekend to go somewhere.
Exactly.
And we'd probably get bored if we were always in the studio. So
yeah,
maybe
bored of Blake.
I don't know. Blake's pretty creative. He's always got some new audio thing going on that he's trying to test out.
Or video.
Exactly. So, I think this episode really, from time to time we do episodes where we don't have guests, and it gives us an opportunity just to stop for a minute and take a look at our industry and do an assessment. And I think right now we're in a really interesting time because you have this a U.S. economy that's on fire right now. You've got extremely record lows of unemployment.
Yep.
You have at the same time you have companies looking to hire individuals more and more.
Ton of job openings.
Yep. Shoe store sales are on a record year at this point.
Yep.
There's been some ups and downs in the year, but overall the ups have been really high. You have a lot of new types of product coming out. It's really interesting. New materials, made from different types of like trees and from recycled materials like bottle caps,
or bottles. Actually, not the caps.
Yeah, exactly.
Just bottles.
And there's just, I don't know, there just seems to be a lot happening right now that, we thought we'd just unpackage and talk a little bit about. And there's so much doom and gloom. I think if you watch the news, there's so much stuff politically that can get you down that we sometimes forget that there's a lot of good stuff happening in our economy and in our industry that's really changing. And I would say, 5 years ago, these shifts started happening that are still going on. But it was at the start, and at the start of a journey or transformation, it's always the scariest because you're not quite sure where it's going or how you fit in or what you do with it. But I think we're at the point where the fear has gone a little bit and people are starting to figure out their way and their path. And I think that's probably our theme for our 2019 Executive Summit is going to be transformation. We did revolution, we've done disruption, and we moved beyond that.
All the shuns, man. We got to pack in all the
We
shuns.
need more isms, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's moved from this kind of fearful state to this like progressive part of companies that are like, they have a new game plan, right? And they have an idea of where they're headed and they're starting to execute against it.
Yeah, I think you're right. If you think of your own personal life about all the incoming data and information and posts and things that your friends or your quasi acquaintances or strangers that you're connected to on LinkedIn are posting, and your mind is just like a jumbled mess of incoming. And so I think trying to get organized about what the industry is doing, I think it's turned into that. It's turned into kind of an above all approach. It's not let's do A, B, and C. Let's freaking do it all, A to Z. And one that's exciting because we have a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. The material side in particular is really fascinating to me, and we're doing more on that. If you just go to footwearinnovation.com, we're talking about materials quite often now and what the real ramifications of using those materials are. But on the other side, it's people can stray away from their core competencies, and so prioritizing is still really important. Building a business plan is still really important. You may have to adjust that business plan 6 months in rather than every year, every 5 years. But I think that we are at the cusp of kind of this really. I'm really bullish about it. The trade stuff is just kind of it's an irritant and it freaks people out, and I understand that. But if you set that aside and kind of look forward to where we're headed, I think as an organization, that's what we've tried to do, because that's where people are, that's where it's at, and that's where the excitement is and development is. And it's really exciting to see smaller family importing companies start to think about digital design and development, or material sourcing or sustainability, when back in the day they never would have done those things. And everyone is transforming at some level, or they're not surviving, to be honest with you.
I think it's at the point too where technology is at a stage where it's more affordable and it's more efficient than it's ever been before.
Right.
So in the past, if you think about it, in the past when you first started with personal computers, you had to basically know some code and prompts to get it to work.
Freaking, man.
C colon
1980. Literally, we had an Atari computer in the 80s, and I lived in North Carolina, and you would program a full screen worth of program with like colons and hashes and all this to make the color change, the screen change from black to blue.
Yeah. And
if you hit enter and nothing happened, you knew somewhere in that code there was
to get back in, right?
Yeah, it was like, what a waste of time.
So now it's a lot of it's plug and play. You've got a lot of companies out there who are doing some really interesting things that I would say it's moving beyond the toy phase, where it's like something cool and unique and interesting. So like I think augmented reality is like that. Augmented reality really came onto the scene, I think, and socialized people to this new technology with Pokemon.
Yeah.
So it was a thing where you're out and you see the image pop up and you're following it and you do some action and you get some reward or coins or something like that. And it kind of was, kind of people are acting very stupidly and running.
Yeah, you go to a park and there's a bunch of kids or nerdy adults, right? Let's be honest with folks. Like big nerd adults or kids are playing. One time I stopped literally off of 66. We were heading out west and we pulled off to stop somewhere, and there's a park, and there was probably 50 people there because it was some Pokemon Go thing. And I was like,
well, it got them away from their TV at home and got them out to the park.
That's right. That's right.
but in terms of application, let's move beyond that. So it's
not gimmicky anymore.
Right. So you have these platform applications that are really neat and cool, where you can take your 3D models and augment them in a way, and like put them put them on your screen, so on your phone or your tablet or whatever.
Right.
And you can go somewhere and you can drop that in order to engage people, to tell your story. And footwear companies are looking to use that for sampling. So if you can imagine, if you can get a 3D model rendering and you can pull that into VR, or you can augment it and drop it on your desk in front of you, something that does not even exist yet.
Right.
And the designer can take a look at it and spin it around and see, and you can zoom in and out, and you can get to a granular level to do that. That kind of thing, when you talk about digitization, is moving beyond that toy phase to a functional phase of saying, do we really need to, we have these 100 shoes. Do we all need to sample 100 shoes, or do we use this technology to narrow down the sampling to 5 pairs?
Right. And then you can switch out the colorways.
Right. So it folds into several. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, then you're becoming more sustainable because you have less waste. You're becoming more cost effective and efficient because you can see exactly what you want, and you could pull in your sales teams from anywhere around the world.
Yeah.
If they have an app, they can drop it on their desks in Paraguay to make sure that the shoes would sell in South America, something like that, right? So you get instant feedback versus shipping a sample around, or having all your teams come to headquarters for 2 or 3 days, flying them all in, and doing that. And I think that's the whole idea, is like, how can we create efficiencies where we could do a whole sampling process where everybody's remote around the world and they don't have to travel.
Right.
And you do it all at one time, and you say, okay, we've narrowed it down to 10. Now these are the ones, and everybody had input, and and it narrows down your sampling process from sketching it out on paper, sending it to the factory, hoping that they get it right. That could take 12 weeks going back and forth to a couple of days.
Yeah, I think it's important that this process is happening to get away from the gimmicky side, because I see these things. I saw recently on LinkedIn, I think you've seen it too, where someone wanted to see what an Apple Watch looked like on their wrist. So they had this sticker, which is kind of an orientation sticker that allows for the AR system to see on their wrist, and then put the watch on their wrist. And it's interesting. It just seems a little gimmicky, and the final utility of that from kind of a democratization point of view, I think is limited. But when you're a company, and particularly if you're an athletic company, you got the resources, you're a big global athletic brand, you could dump millions of dollars into the infrastructure needed to commercialize this activity
Right.
throughout your supply chain, which
Right.
the consumer will never see. That's where the real benefit is. That's
Right.
where I think it really is important that we talk about these things and drive it, because as cool as it is to look at my wrist and see what 15 different colored Apple Watch bands will look like on my wrist, I can just it's I don't know, I can visualize
Right, you
that.
can already do
I think
it, right?
So
Yeah.
it's cool. I mean, it's Pokemon Go cool, I guess, but that's about it. Oh wait, that's an oxymoron. Pokemon Go cool. Jasmine's rolling her eyes.
I think it retail is an experience factor, right? It's
Right.
trying to draw people in, trying to do something a little bit different. They have screens now where you can augment yourself and have different clothes
On
you
site, brick and mortar.
Yeah, so instead of actually going into a dressing room and trying it on, you can instantly see on yourself or on your person a shirt or shoes or sunglasses or something like that. And then in the same way, it helps you narrow that down. But that can be quite costly. Not everybody can do that. A family footwear retailer cannot do that.
And when that thing breaks,
yeah, exactly.
kind of like the Slurpee machine at 7-Eleven, which is
Right.
always broken.
Right.
Yeah, again, Jasmine's giving a look like she wants a Slurpee and it's broken.
Even I've been using, there's a company that I've been in contact with called Sketchfab. And in essence, it's a global platform for people who do 3D modeling to upload their models and interact. It's like a 3D community where they do this. And a lot of it was built out of gaming. So video
Right.
games are kind of have these models, more and more as the gaming systems have gotten better. And so for us, I've gone on there and I've taken things and dropped them on
I've
tables.
seen you at work. It's fun to watch.
The funnest thing was taking a 3D. So we got sent an UGG boot with FDRA's logo on it, which is
Right.
pretty neat. It's a mini 3D printed version of an UGG boot that we had. So I took that and scanned it with an app for free.
Mm-hmm.
I then pulled it into Sketchfab. Mm-hmm. And then I went over to the White House and I dropped the UGG boot on the White House lawn and recorded it and sent a message to President Trump. It was actually the first augmented reality advocacy message ever
Right.
by FDRA. You would think someone like the Chamber of Commerce with all their millions of dollars could do it, not a small four-person
They could do it from where you were at. They could do it from their window.
Exactly. But I went and dropped it and sent the message. And the idea is how can you, even for us, for trade right now, there's so many groups, thousands of groups trying to send messages, emails, calls to USTR, to the White House to advocate against tariffs on their industry.
Right.
So how do you break through that to policymakers who are used to print or copy? And so even this is an experience that they're like, oh my, that's interesting. You know, it's not a huge wow factor where it's a game changer, but it allows you to tell your message and actually have it seen and read.
Totally.
Versus just put in the pile or delete it off.
Yeah,
off
a
the
2-page
email.
letter or augmented reality child shoe dropped on the front steps of USTR on 17th Street in DC,
Right.
which is going to be more effective. I think it's the latter than the former. And I think that to me, it's like the messaging it's brilliant because it's like when you put duties on things, it's just not the Chinese don't pay it.
Right.
The Vietnamese don't pay it.
Right.
American companies, and therefore they're either it's taken out of the hides of the consumers with risen prices,
Right.
or it's taken out of infrastructure spending and investment. So we could be doing more of this kind of stuff, investing in AR companies, meaning
Right.
if we didn't pay $3 billion in duties every year. And so why not drop a kid's shoe, which has some of the highest duties of anything that we import, onto the steps of USTR
Yep.
and tag them with it and see what they,
Right.
they won't respond, but it might plant a seed in their minds. Like, these are things we shouldn't be messing with long term, to say the least.
And the other part of the kind of the backroom operations that are really changing too. We've talked about it before, but the idea of a centralized database where suppliers and brands get together and communicate and see and visualize materials. You still need to touch and feel it, but ahead of time, narrow down that search from 100 different types of trend focused materials that you're looking at, narrow it down to 5, and then request samples for those 5, so that you're not. The suppliers, people don't realize this who don't do materials, but suppliers send out thousands of these material books every single year. And there are hundreds of millions of tons of waste and materials that are never used because these material companies and suppliers make these materials in the assumption that they're getting it right.
Right.
And they're using Excel to manage their materials, and there's no way for them to understand if, it's a kind of a gut reaction of what's selling and what's not. And if they had a better analytic tool to see what brands are looking at, they could better focus their efforts to make that type of material and discard the materials that are never looked at. Why make something?
Right.
Why put an effort into something that you know is not going to sell or is not your core competency? They just don't have the ability to do that right now. They're making assumptions rather than using data to help them improve their business and relationships with brands. And so this idea of a material exchange is something that brands in our industry have been working together on for a while, and it's starting to come together and starting to come to life. And suppliers are starting to see the benefits of being able to have analytic tools,
right,
better communicate, better execute. And for brands, what's really interesting is there's other people that are similar in this space, but it's more high end, right? So the idea, it's more for designers. It's
right.
like, oh, let's visualize, let's do this. But in essence, material exchange goes beyond just the visualization. It helps almost every single department. It's going to help the compliance people. Mm-hmm. It's going to help the sustainability people. Mm-hmm. It's going to help the sourcing people.
Check.
And so only an organization like ours who goes into these businesses, builds the trust, has the trust with people, and knows all the different departments can something like that work, where we say it shouldn't just be focused on helping designers design better shoes. Yes, of course it should, but it should also help with development and sourcing and have the data and the analytics all built in. So there's not, when we talk about this platform and people are looking at it, whether they're going to use it or not, I can honestly say that this is going to help tremendously cut out costs and waste out of all our supply chains, both with brands, but also with suppliers too. And I think in our industry, it's very interesting because there's such an ecosystem. Right. So it's not, we all understand, I think, that as suppliers do well, we do well. And as we do well, the suppliers do well. And you all have to work together as we develop and go forward, because there's so many new materials coming out and it's becoming harder to execute and know how to apply these materials and the quality of it and the compliance of it.
Right.
And brands, as kind of production moved overseas, the expertise kind of moved along with that. And so the suppliers are the experts, and we have to rely on them to help us make sure that the quality is there and the execution is there. So,
for me, we've talked about it before on the show, the change from a consumer experience that was curated by the brand, meaning here are the 3 shoes that we are going to offer, and take them or leave them. And the consumer's like, all right, I'll take the black one, or I'll take the brown one. Or and we've now moved to consumers dictating kind of how things look and being more active participants in the design.
Right.
I see material exchange kind of an extension of that, because no longer is it the material suppliers just presenting this static, supply in a book that says, here's what we have, take it or leave it. We only have one. I know you want regular camo. We got a purple camo, and that's all we got.
Right.
To a digital interaction ongoing with those analytics you talked about that provide the feedback in real time as to what the end consumer wants, which drives the designer to develop something, which drives the supplier to make sure they have that in stock and not the other way around. Right. So it's bottom up. It's digitizing from bottom up from consumer, when we've been in this world where it's been factory forward.
Right.
And I think that's important. It's coming. If people haven't adjusted their internally to that, it's not just something you read about on a blog or that you think may or may not be happening, but you don't have to adjust anything internally to your business to accommodate that.
Right.
That's nonsense. Just as much as you're investing in e-commerce, which most companies are, you need to be thinking about how you digitize your supply chain and how you have access to these things in a digital way.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the mold's been busted.
Right.
And there's no turning back. So,
well, the benefit from material exchanges is extremely affordable, because that's what we started off with. Let's make it affordable, so a startup brand can use it just like Nike will use it. Full. Selling one pair to selling billions of pairs should be able to use the system.
Right.
And I also think the platforms are also changing. So we talk a lot about shoe customization, where people can go online now and change the colors of their shoes or change the types of materials.
You were talking about, what's that Italian brand that you were showing me the other day? High-end Italian. I got this look like, oh, crap, I got to remember. High-end, I'll just filibuster while you look for it. High-end Italian shoes from Italy. It's one thing to do Nike ID out of a factory in Asia, but an Italian high-end leather men's
It's,
shoe.
and I'm probably mispronouncing it, but Girati.
Girati.
Girati, Girotti, Girati. And the idea is you can go in there, and we did it in the office, but you can literally change every different component on the shoes, color, type, different things like that on their website. And they, you think a traditional Italian made shoes is handcrafted. It takes a while. It's good quality leather. And these guys are saying we can still do that, but we can digitize it and we can get you exactly what you want, more customized. And I think that's something really unique because they're fully customizing almost every component of the shoe. Where in the U.S., some brands are traditionally just changing out one or two things, like a colorway, or they're changing out one part of the upper, or you can move this around, right? And so Material Exchange is going to be able to hopefully provide a more robust platform to expand that, to be able to do more of what Girati is doing and change out all these different things and create really unique products and deliver it and know that you have the materials in stock. You can do it. The analytics are there. You can execute that kind of thing. But I don't know. So in some ways, I wonder how many people want customized shoes versus just going to the store and being told. Some people don't like a menu of options. They like a selection of 3 to 5 things.
That's why I like Trader Joe's over Giant, man. I don't need 15 types of Raisin Bran.
So it doesn't work for everybody, but it could. But I also think when we talk about customization, it's the same thing as sustainability. Like, what is that, right?
Right.
So when you talk about it, right. So as a brand, you can talk about it, and you're trying to say this, what it means to you, but ultimately it's what does the consumer think it is, right?
Right.
So if you say, here's a fully customized shoe, they're going to think, well, that's going to fit my foot perfectly. And in actuality, people like Superfeed and other people are building these platforms where they're saying it's customized shoes. Well, it's customized within a range. It'll better fit your foot, and it'll have better comfort than the shoe that you grab off the shelf.
Right.
But it's not 100. It doesn't scan your foot and give you the exact contours of your foot to make sure that it's 100% comfortable and fit and all that kind of stuff. So we have to be really careful when we use that marketing language, because you can get called out by a consumer by saying, actually, it's not customized.
Right.
It's close, but it's not what you were selling me. And it's the same way with sustainability. I think in 2019, the story of our industry is going to be sustainability. There we go.
We need Notre Dame.
In the year 2019, I predict sustainability will be the key message delivered from brands to the ears of children across America. Sustainability. But in all seriousness, I think it will be. We see these different trends of how. So I think when you go to trade shows, the past couple of years, the innovation has been on comfort.
Right.
Our shoes are so comfortable. We put all this innovation. It's like, okay, fantastic, but it got old. So just like the news flips every 3 nights to something new because they're chasing a different ambulance down the road.
Right.
I think our industry now is starting to change the message from this like innovational comfort to innovational sustainability. We're cutting out wastes.
Right.
There's companies been doing it for forever, like Keen. I mean, Nike's put a lot into it. Companies like Patagonia are built around it.
Yeah.
All these folks have been doing it for a long, long time and know what it is. Other people are coming around to it, but we're even forming a group and trying to figure out how we all work together on that. So if anybody's out there and is interested in actually working on real projects on sustainability to help our factories and help our supply chains become more sustainable, we welcome that. But you have to be very careful if you're saying you have a sustainable shoe. How do you measure that?
Yeah, it's the wild, wild west, man, because sustainability means something to so many different people. In fact, when you have conversations with companies and you mentioned a couple it's kind of a spectrum of how companies approach it. One, is it economical for you to be sustainable? Meaning, are you designing shoes? At the end of the day, if you're publicly traded and you have shareholders and you're expect to make a profit, you got to sell shoes people are willing to buy. And so, are you designing towards silhouettes and colorways that people want, or are you designing towards end of life for the product so it's biodegradable? Those are 2 totally different things. So figuring out what your definition is, and the other sense is there's a lot of cool things happening that extend the life of different things with the Adidas footwear, with Parlay with for the oceans, with the ocean plastic. That's interesting. It's a great story. You can conceptualize and the consumer can understand it.
Right.
Because we all see these images of the island of trash the size of Texas in the Pacific Ocean. But at the end of the day, that shoe goes into a landfill
Right.
and it's still not biodegradable. So how are we making these baby steps in some aspects, but then the full-fledged leap into full biodegradation?
Right.
And will consumers want that stuff?
Yep.
Probably not. At least as where we sit now. So we're at a stage where, to your point, you could define it as you want to. As long as you're defining it and you're true to that, then I think consumers will reward you with it.
Right.
But
Well,
there's not a standard definition.
And if there's a good example, it's probably New Balance made in America, right? They kept saying their shoes were made in America when many of them were actually stitched together. So
Right.
they import in the upper and they stitch it here. It's not
Right.
it's not actually materials from America, but they label it made in America. And they got sued in California and they
Right.
lost the lawsuit because
Right.
of that. So
Right.
be careful. Be careful what you're labeling. Be careful what you're listing.
all
Be careful
about
what you're saying.
consumer deception. That's what it comes down to.
Just be authentic. Be honest about your brand. Be proud of it.
Right.
Be authentic with it and be honest with it. But I think, in the same way that when we talk about material exchange, there are companies who spent millions of dollars building up their own kind of digital libraries. And the challenge with that was, as soon as you left at 5 p.m., there were new materials you had to scan in or take a picture of and load into your PLM or your system to manage it. It's a never-ending process.
Right.
And the only way that it works for everybody at a scalable level is if we all work together in a platform and help each other and help the suppliers upload it for us, right?
Right.
The same way with sustainability, don't go it alone, right? You can do your own projects and do certain things like that, but how much more effective can it be if brands who in a non-competitive space, this isn't about trend focus, this isn't about selling, this is not about any of that stuff. It's simply about making our factories and our supply chains more sustainable. Mm-hmm. Let's all work together and build that kind of narrative to our supply chains, educate them, and then use a collective action to say it's not just important to one brand, it's important to all of us. So if you want to do business with us, this is what we're looking to do.
Right.
We'll help you, but we all have to get there together. And I think, when we're talking about kind of that's innovation in and of itself, right? Process innovation is probably some of the most important innovation. We see innovations on the shelf, right? We see all these new cool shoes. But in actuality, I think when we talk about our businesses and we talk about dollars and cents, innovation for a lot of profitability issues come down to cutting out waste and trimming the fat in our business and our supply chains and reforming and reshaping. And I think part of that challenge, though, too, is I think two things of it are keeping up with what's happening. And so that's why we created footwearinnovation.com. It became hard for us to keep up with what's happening.
Totally.
And we're kind of the industry's think tank. It's our job to kind of keep up with trends and see and talk to people in the industry about what they're doing and see kind of the way forward. Everybody gets there differently, but if you have enough conversations, you can see where the trends are happening on with these backroom operations, what people are doing, and find kind of the truth or whatever. And so footwearinnovation.com is a great tool where anybody can go to it and catch up. If your head's to the grindstone all week and you're working on a project and you didn't have time to read
I'm
everything,
looking at it right now, not even listening to what you're saying.
And we have original. That's normal in all my life. But we would have original content videos from Tiffany Beers, who we've had on Shoein before and we'll continue to have on. But it's about making those voices available. We do events. That's the other thing. We do events. And it's extremely important to come to events, not just because of the experts and industry leaders that are talking and your takeaways. It's about the interactions between companies where you can find common ground, share ideas, test out ideas to each other in a safe space. And so when you see events on our website, fda.org, under events and training, attend these events and just come and talk to each other. We need to have these exchanges more and more than ever in these spaces, beyond the trade shows,
just
beyond
do
the
it.
stuff. So anyway,
Just do it.
exactly. Maybe I ran out of steam there.
No, man.
We
you're
talked about a
rock and
lot of
rolling.
stuff, right? Like,
did.
But these are the things
The potpourri of footwear innovation.
Potpourri. Maybe that's my segment.
Potpourri.
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 Polka-ri? Polka.
What segment are we doing, Jasmine? We haven't talked about it.
I want to do a fashion focused segment.
I want you to do one too.
Okay.
Good.
I don't want to talk about what I'm buying.
Only because this is an interesting topic, right? Because like, even though sneakers are in and everybody wants to be comfortable, the silhouettes for heels are going back to being like a little bit more uncomfortable.
What?
A little bit. Like the pointy-toed heel is definitely back in, and that
man.
hurts
That's
for
what
some
I wear.
girls.
It's in for it's more and more
If
in for
it's not
dudes.
pointy, it's not for polk.
And if you have a wider foot, that's like, it's torture.
Does New Balance make wide foot stilettos?
Made in America.
No. But I think that was interesting, right? So I'm like, oh God, I mean, they're really cute, but do I want to wear them, right? And then just how we were talking about all these like different technologies, me and Tiffany actually ran across the same article. It's called Fit Station, that is powered by HP.
Yep.
And they actually do scan your foot, and they give you analysis of like your pressure points and like the rotation of your heel or something like that. They have like they'll give you a whole portfolio. So I'm like, I've seen a lot of things that are either try to give you analysis of your foot, or that you can customize your shoe, but I've never seen a program that has them together. So that I feel like is kind of like the next thing, like being able to get something that'll give you the most comfortable shoe instead of in that pointy-toed heel, but you can also make it like your personal style or fashion, and they give you some options. So I thought that was really interesting that we talked about that, and then that was one of the things that I was going to bring up in what's trending, which is uncomfortable shoes.
I can unlayer some of that too. So there's a, if you go to a CVS, you can step on one of those Dr. Scholl scales, and they'll give you the range of your insole that you might want. So that's been the traditional way of doing things. And then now, if you go to a high-end running store, they'll let you run, and they'll like look at your running, your patterns, and your strike points, and they're starting to use more technology. What's interesting about HP is, so our friends at Deckers are partnering on them to kind of prove this out and try to look to see how it works for footwear, and they're really excited about it. But so typical orthotics, you have to go to a podiatrist, and they take a mold of your foot, and that's when you have like serious foot issues, and you get a customized insole, and that's top of the line. So HP is trying to replicate that through technology, right?
And because I feel like you'll also wear bad shoes until you get to that point.
True.
And now your feet are messed up when you could have done it in the to avoid it.
So when I see this, I think that's where they're headed. I'm not sure that anything. I don't know. I'll have to see, but I wonder if I think molding someone's foot is always going to be the utmost thing, because you're actually getting a strike right on the foot to see what it is and mold it around that, right? So, but this technology could help people who don't have medical issues but just have discomfort. Right. So in that area, I think it'd be a really good, interesting thing if they can do it. I'm also interested in the price points, right?
Yeah.
I'm also interested in what the cost is, right?
Yeah.
And then what is it worth? Because there's all this elasticity of price and demand, from an economic framework. It's like, okay, if we sell this for $100, are we going to sell a lot of these? Or is this going to be $200 and it's going to be people who are actually in real pain using it versus mass population? So I think it's the next step forward, or right step forward, but it's not the end of the process. I think this is. But this is a fun thing.
I'm curious, though. I mean, because I've gotten calls from angry people at the office, like, they don't make shoes wide enough in this brand. I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm able to help you with that. But I understand your pain.
Get on it, Jasmine. Get on it.
I would be curious to see how it works.
Yeah,
merging the
me
fashion
too.
side.
And that's the fun thing about all this stuff that's happening is, I don't think we have to be fearful about what's happening in the changes. It's exciting now that I think companies have changed their mindset a little bit and are forward looking and are trying to develop plans to execute and start, everybody's starting to build the future now, and it's a really exciting time to be involved. If you cut off CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, our country is an amazing country. Don't look at the politics of it. Let's look at all the things that we're doing together as Americans working together and as an industry working together on a lot of interesting backroom operations that are going to change how shoes are made and sold going forward to Americans.
So, with that, I feel optimistic, Andy. And if you are optimistic, make sure you check out all the different ways we communicate with you on shoeandshow.com, on LinkedIn, footwearinnovation.com, FDRA.org.
We even have our own channel now on YouTube. We have a
do.
Footwear Innovation channel where we
Yep.
go out and we grab videos and we create our own like little playlist there. So there's a lot of ways.
There's a ton of ways to stay connected. Some Facebook page I think we may or may not have. I never check. I'm not on Facebook.
Check it out. What's that all about? FDRA.
So that's MCA, and for MCA, for Jasmine and myself, Shoe In Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.